On November 15th, 1887, Georgia O'Keeffe was born on her family dairy farm near Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, the first girl and the second of seven children. From 1892 to 1900, O'Keeffe received art lessons at home and sought to further her instruction with Sarah Mann, a local watercolorist. From 1907 to 1908, she attended the Art Students League in New York and was awarded the league's 1907 to 1908 Still Life Scholarship. During that summer in 1908, she attended the league's outdoor school at Lake George, New York. In the fall of 1908, O'Keeffe moved to Chicago to work as a freelance commercial artist. In October of 1915, O'Keeffe made the decision to switch directions with her art and produce a series of charcoal abstractions. Then she sent some of the drawings to her friend Anita Pulitzer in New York. Pulitzer takes a group of O'Keeffe's charcoal drawings to Stieglitz at 291 on New Year's Day. O'Keeffe then sent Pulitzer additional work that began a 30-year correspondence with Stieglitz. When Stieglitz and O'Keeffe met in 1916, he was 52 and already famous in the art world and an acclaimed photographer with an avant-garde gallery in Manhattan. O'Keeffe, on the other hand, was 28 and unknown. Stieglitz became her guide and mentor. On April 3rd, 1917, Stieglitz opened Georgia O'Keeffe's first one-person show of her work at 291. On February 7th, 1921, Stieglitz's retrospective exhibit opened at the Anderson Galleries, which included several nudes within the 45 photographs of O'Keeffe, creating sensation with the public and with critics. For these photographs, he had O'Keeffe pose in front of her artworks. The poses were analyzed by critics to be suggestive of femininity and sensuality, partially due to the first wave of feminism in the 1920s. O'Keeffe's work was considered to be feminist art and was constantly read by critics to contain references to feminine forms and feminine sexual energy. This was the beginning of her struggle with critics and their determination to find feminine and sexual imagery and symbols in her work. Throughout her relationship with Stieglitz, he would photograph her nude on multiple occasions. In March of 1925, Stieglitz opened Alfred Stieglitz Presents Seven Americans with work from Arthur G. Dove, Marston Hartley, John Marin, Charles Demuth, Paul Strand, Georgia O'Keeffe, and Alfred Stieglitz at the Anderson Galleries, in which O'Keeffe's large format paintings of flowers are first exhibited. Georgia O'Keeffe had been influenced by flowers since early childhood. When she was living in rural Wisconsin, her high school teacher brought in a Jack in the Pulpit plant to class. It was where she began to examine the shapes and textures of flowers and had the desire to paint them as well. In O'Keeffe's own words, when you take a flower in your hand and really look at it, it's your world for the moment. Most people in the city rush around, so they have no time to look at a flower. I want them to see it, whether they want to or not. O'Keeffe's paintings are zoomed-in renderings of flowers on huge canvases. She wanted to take something so small that could easily be ignored in passing and paint it magnified on a large scale so that the attention of the viewer is grabbed, when otherwise it may not have been. These paintings are about her desire to paint overlooked details, and she states that her work is objective and not symbolic in any way. When these paintings were exhibited, critics continued to analyze her work as feminine and sexual as they did before. Stieglitz drove this analysis with interviews and literature, and he was suggesting the erotic nature of these works by O'Keeffe. Stieglitz had a much bigger influence in the art world, so anytime O'Keeffe tried to change the perception of these paintings with their actual intentions, no one wanted to listen. Georgia O'Keeffe's flower paintings were considered abstract representations of female genitalia. Throughout her lifetime, in particular, male critics condemned her works as filthy sex depictions, in part because they were created by a female artist. This interpretation of her work was furthered by her husband, Alfred Stieglitz, standing in their creative circle. Therefore, the men surrounding O'Keeffe, who regarded her art through a sexist and sexualized perspective, tempered with her intentions to be a radical modernist painter. Stieglitz said that she transcends the training from her male peers. She is the woman unafraid to move past what others have conceded. Stieglitz was trying to be complimentary to her, but he continues to separate her from male artists by referring to her identity as a woman and calling her exceptional, which in turn implies that she is one of the few women that can compete with male artists. O'Keeffe stated that I made you take the time to look at what I saw, and when you took the time to really notice my flower, you hung all of your associations with flowers as if I think and see what you think and see in a flower, and I don't. O'Keeffe tried to break away from the critics' analysis by painting objective landscapes of New York City. She painted the abstract skyline with skyscrapers, but no one wanted to show these as paintings. She was not able to exhibit these paintings because at the time the implication was that a woman could not depict the urban space because it was considered inherently masculine, and the skyscrapers were considered symbolic of the male phallus. O'Keeffe was sort of stuck inside of a trap. She didn't want her work to be analyzed sexually, but when she purposely tried to avoid feminine objects, shapes, and colors, these pictures were ignored by the art world. She had a hard decision to make. Either she keeps making the work she originally wanted to and deal with the critics' view of her work, or she makes these new paintings purposely absent of female suggestions and is ignored by the art world, effectively ending her career and status. O'Keeffe makes a difficult decision to continue working in her original style and face constant criticism that misrepresents and undermines her position as an artist. O'Keeffe has been criticized for denying her work to be included in feminist and solely female exhibits. She has been accused of not being a feminist for not making her work about feminism. O'Keeffe was a feminist her whole life, but the reason she avoided these exhibits is because she did not want to take the title of a feminist artist or a female artist. Throughout her entire career as an artist, she had always had an aversion to being identified as her gender in art world. O'Keeffe wanted to be seen simply as an artist and not separated by gender from her male peers, and she did not see what her being a woman had to do with her art. In the last years of her life, she lived in northern New Mexico and began painting landscapes of her new home. She included flowers and skulls as objects inside of her landscapes. She still faced criticism and critiques for these new paintings, but she openly denies these claims. The legacy of her work continued to be tainted by the damage done early in her career by male critics and Alfred Stieglitz, but her effort to deny them, to tell her own side of her work, has made an impact on how she is analyzed today by contemporary critics. And this is my works cited.